Hello, and welcome to Beyond Biotech, the weekly podcast from Labiotech. I'm Dylan Kassane, and this is episode 155 for the podcast. Ros Deegan is an industry leader and the CEO of OMass Therapeutics, an Oxford-based biotechnology company discovering medicines against highly validated target ecosystems, such as membrane proteins or intracellular complexes. OMass's MC2 program targets Congenital Adrenal Hyperplasia, or CAH, and is set to enter the clinic this year. And in our interview today, she walks me through how the company is preparing for the trials, how their approach differs to existing treatment options, and the impact on patient lives they hope to have. A leader in the UK biopharma industry, she also explains the strength of the UK industry and how it can maintain an edge in the face of competition from Europe and the US. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Ros Deegan of OMass Therapeutics. Ros Deegan, welcome to Beyond Biotech.
Thank you, Dylan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Ros, you've had a great 20-year career now in biotech and in pharma. You've been at GSK, you've been at Bicycle Therapeutics, and now at OMass. What actually sparked this passion or this journey for you into biologics, into drug discovery? Tell me about where you've come from.
So I think it's the practical application of science that has always inspired me. And I think probably one of the most instrumental parts of my career was actually back at school. So I was 16 at the time, and I thought that it would be a good idea to volunteer at the local vet so that I could get some exposure to that practical side of science. But when you're 16, you don't always think things through. And I think I thought that I would be cleaning rabbit hutches or something fairly low key. But I found myself instead actually holding the paw of a black Labrador that was about to be castrated. And I had a little blip in my career at that point because I actually passed out before the dog did. So that was a real wake-up call. I wasn't going to be a medic. I wasn't going to be a vet. But I really liked that practical side. So I needed to get myself out of the operating theatre. And I think that drug discovery actually threads the needle of being close enough to the emotional impact of the scientific endeavour that you're pursuing, but actually not right at the coalface. So that was instrumental in my choices of career.
In terms of education, you passed through Cambridge and also later some business degree at INSEAD. Tell me about that. How did that play into this journey of yours?
Yeah, so at Cambridge, I had started a science degree, although I'll be honest that at the time when I entered, I thought I might transfer to law later. Again, I think it's part of those teens where I'd watched a lot of crime dramas. But during my period at Cambridge, not only did I dawn on me that I was going to have to spend a lot of time with criminals in the other job, but my passion for science really got further ignited. And that's really because I was focused at that point on the biological sciences. And there again, there's that much more tangible impact on patients. And I've always been looking for something that you can talk about at a dinner party and inspire people with, and actually get them excited in what you're doing. So that was important to my path. I think at INSEAD, it was really about laying on top of that the business side, because at Cambridge, I'd done a pure science degree, and I actually started a PhD, which I did not finish. So I worked out during the first year of my PhD that although I love science, the practical side is just not my strength and not where I'm ultimately going to be able to build a successful career. So from my perspective, I worked out too early to sort of continue that. I decided to actually transfer that to a master's degree and go into industry. And then I immediately saw that the business side was much more a fit with how I operate and how I think. And it's such a fascinating industry, the regulations, the scientific basis, the business side, you build these fantastic small companies. So that got me really excited, but I wanted to layer onto my scientific education some of the formal business education. I did that at INSEAD.
Well, some of the transactions that you've led, you've built some teams as well there at Bicycle and Trevena. You've moved programs into the clinic. Have you been able to bring that experience and really bring it to bear now that you're at OMass?
I think absolutely. And at Trevena, I was in a unique position because often at Biotech, you do wear multiple hats. But I wore these two very different hats. I was still head of HR, at the time that we moved our first program into the clinic. But I was also project lead for that actual program. So I saw the top level cultural shift that an organization needs to go through when you change any aspect of the business, and the transition from research to development is meaningful. But I was also exposed to the actual detailed element of driving a project plan through to the clinic. And so both those two discrete experiences set me up well here at OMass.
And you've worked in the UK. You're also leading the bicycle subsidiary in the US as well. Has there been a big difference working in those two different environments? Is it a cultural difference, or is the industry pretty similar across the transatlantic gap?
It's actually a difficult question for me to answer in some ways, Dylan, because all of my biotech experience came from the US. So I lean very US. And then, of course, when I joined OMass, I was CEO. So I took that experience and I've really thought in a US leaning way in how I've operated OMass. So I think we run a very equivalent biotech culture to a US peer. I think from what I sort of see around me and what I hear about how other companies operate, it is really marrying that amazing scientific foundation that the UK is so powerful in with the ambition that maybe is a better fit with the US sort of natural cultural mindset, that can-do attitude. And I do think that I bring that to the role I have at OMass.
Tell me a little bit about the ambitions at OMass. It's you're in drug discovery. You're targeting some pretty hard-to-drug proteins. What's the ambition of the company? What's the mission of OMass?
Yeah, so the mission at OMass is to build a big biotech here in the UK. So the UK, as I mentioned, has really punched above its weight for decades in terms of scientific prowess. But it has struggled to have that big biotech success story, something not valued at $1 billion, but valued at multiple $1 billion. You look at a company like Vertex. Vertex was only started, tens of years ago, not hundreds of years ago. And its market cap is now significantly higher than a bellwether of the UK pharmaceutical industry, GSK. And so our ambition at OMass, we have the platform to do it, is to build the next Vertex here, headquartered in the UK.
And are you getting aid in that direction? Are there VCs who are interested? Are there funders who are interested? And are you getting the regulatory support as well?
So I think we are. So I think the UK is a great place to build a biotech. It has a lower cost of capital, so it also marries an ambitious outlook. And we have been able to raise capital to pursue more than one asset. As I mentioned, we're founded on a platform. So this is based on decades of pioneering research at Oxford University by our scientific founder, Dame Carol Robinson. And it's really that platform that puts us in a position to be able to pursue multiple programs. And if you have a great team and you have a great platform, then there's actually much more synergy in building a real biotech company than in setting up separate teams around separate science where you have to duplicate everything around individual assets. So our VCs do support the big vision at OMass. And we've been able to raise capital to drive us along the early steps of that journey.
Well, you have raised a lot of capital. It's north of 160 million now, I think. You've got really strong partnerships in the VC community and also outside. How important are these partnerships to actually building something long-term?
They're absolutely critical. Partnerships in general are critical, but you've hit on the most important one, because we all get out of bed in the morning because of the science, but its co-partner is money, ultimately, in being able to fulfill our vision. And OMass was originally funded by Oxford Science Enterprises as a seed stage company. Then Syncona led our Series A, so both UK-based investors. And at our Series B, we brought in a more international syndicate. So we were led by GV, North Pond, Sanofi Ventures, and then British Capital topped up that round later. So we have very supportive, high-quality investor syndicate, and they are and will continue to be important in our trajectory.
As well as OMass, you've had positions and you continue to hold positions in the broader biotech industry in the UK. So on the board of the BIA, and you served on the Prime Minister's 2024 Business Council as well. Is it really important for the industry to play a part in informing government, educating government, trying to get the right regulations in place? Is that as essential as having the good science and the good data and I guess the good money?
I think it is as essential, and I think it is an opportunity when you're in an operating role to help support those who actually advocate for policy, such as the full-time staff of the BIA, to provide the context and the stories that bring those policies to life. Because in the end, it's ultimately storytelling that drives change. And we are in the position where we can provide that. And so it's a privilege to serve on the BIA board. They are an incredibly strong advocacy organization for the industry in the UK. I genuinely believe, although it was before my time, that the rapid sale of Silicon Valley Bank UK to HSBC might not have happened without that support from the BIA. They played an important role during COVID. And so I think it is really a key part of my role as a leader in the sector.
I want to talk a little bit now about the actual science there at OMass, and you've got an MC2 program that's addressing congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Am I saying that correctly?
That is right.
Or we say it as CAH. Tell me a little bit about this condition. What does it mean for patients, and what are you doing to address it?
Yeah, so CAH is a genetic disease. It's a rare disease, but not that rare. So around 20,000 patients in the US. And these patients can't make cortisol. So we all know cortisol. We know it's a stress hormone. It actually does a lot of other things. And it's required for life. And so these patients need supplementation with exogenous glucocorticoid. But the other challenge that they suffer from is that in normal individuals, cortisol would be also turning itself off. So there are negative feedback loops on the cortisol pathway. And so in the absence of these negative feedback loops, the body thinks it needs to make a lot more cortisol. And so you've effectively got this sort of blocked pipe. But there is a second pipe that is still open, which is to make adrenal androgens. Now, those are usually made at very low levels, but because there's a blocked pipe on one side, all the precursors of cortisol now get shunted down the other pipe. And these patients make large amounts of adrenal androgens because that cortisol synthesis pathway is in hyperdrive. These adrenal androgens cause problems, as you might imagine. They're effectively male sex hormones, so you're making them at the wrong level, in the wrong gender, at the wrong time. It causes ambiguous genitalia at birth, causes precocious puberty, and puberty occurring in very young kids. You have reproductive challenges in both sexes. So problems really throughout life. And MC2 sits at the sort of proximal point in that cortisol synthesis pathway. And so we are turning off MC2, which allows us to bring down those adrenal androgens. The other complexity here is that physicians today will actually overdose the glucocorticoid. So that's how they're managing it. They're sort of trying to turn off the pathway in this incredibly distal way by giving a lot more than you actually need for physiological purposes of the glucocorticoid, which has its own issues because then you end up with metabolic effects, obesity, insulin resistance, osteoporosis. And so today you've got high glucocorticoid and you've got high androgen. So we're going to stop the androgens directly and allow that glucocorticoid dose to go back to a physiologic level.
And this is essentially the unique selling point, right? This is the one thing that OMass is doing different. What does it mean in terms of patient outcomes?
Yeah, so what's really important about the MC2 antagonist that we're developing is we're developing an antagonist that is insensitive to how much that cortisol pathway is ramped up. And so other people are going after the same pathway, but the challenge is that you have to block the pathway, but you also have to do that against the context of a hyper-stimulated pathway. And so the treatment goal is to get you both lower androgens, so bring down the androgens to the normal range, but also bring down the glucocorticoid to physiologic levels. And what we've seen with competitors, so one example is crinecerfont, is that they have a nice impact on androgens when the glucocorticoid level is high, but as you taper off that glucocorticoid level, that androgen level rises again because the pathway gets overstimulated and their agent struggles to compete. So for our agent, there is also another MC2 antagonist, but that is fully competitive with ACTH. But we've designed antagonists of MC2 that are insensitive. So ACTH is a natural hormone, so that's the hormone that is at very high levels because of this cortisol synthesis pathway being in hyperdrive. And our antagonist is effectively insensitive to whether there is high ACTH in the system or low ACTH in the system. And we designed that by designing a antagonist that sticks on the receptor, so it has a long residency time.
Are you in the clinic already this year? I know you were planning to get in 2025.
Yeah, so that is still the target, to get in later this year. So we've been finishing the GLP tox studies.
And the preclinical data that you've already got, is that giving you some confidence about the trials that you're heading into?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that's really nice about endocrinology is that preclinical data actually does translate nicely into the clinic. And you can do a challenge study. You can do it in both animals and in healthy subjects. So in rats, we have done a study where you dose the compounds, you pre-dose the compound, then you challenge with the natural hormone ACTH, and you can measure corticosterone, which is the rat equivalent of cortisol. And that system allows you to effectively work out if you can turn off the pathway at both high and low concentrations of ACTH, because those early time points after the ACTH challenge are very high concentrations of ACTH, but then it's metabolized relatively quickly to lower concentrations of ACTH. And our compound is effectively able to block that pathway at all those different concentrations, and we can clearly differentiate from other compounds that are in development against MC2, which struggle at the high concentration of ACTH but are effective at the low concentration of ACTH. We will do the same type of study in a healthy volunteer phase 1, so you can get really rich phase 1 data that is then translatable into patients and also ultimately to registrational endpoints using that challenge study, which should give us not just an efficacy prediction, but also differentiation again from competition.
Tell me a little bit about the patient group. It can really affect children. Are children a big part of the CAH patient group?
They are. So it affects individuals throughout life. So there are adults and children living with CAH, but the pediatric population is very high from an unmet need perspective, because of course you're going through a lot of change during that period. Height is a real issue. So initially these patients typically grow faster than their peers, but then the bone plates actually fuse, so they typically end up short stature. So physicians are carefully managing height during the whole growth period. Also, you've got puberty that you're needing to manage. As I said, this can occur very early and in a much more precocious way. And of course, when you're going through those stages of life, it's not always easy anyway. And if you layer on these impacts in terms of hormonal changes and challenging hormonal situations, that of course has mental health impacts as well.
And so how are you actually engaging with patient groups when it comes to, I guess, setting up the trial, but also becoming informed and sharing the science?
Yeah, so we are lucky because there is a great patient group, so the CARES Foundation. So we've been engaged with them since the very early days of this program. And we will continue to use that in order to really better understand that patient experience so that we can appropriately design our trials, both from an endpoints perspective and also from a recruitment perspective.
You said that one of the big benefits of OMass is that you're building on top of a platform. This is one outcome or one particular approach built on top of the platform. Are there others that you're considering as well?
Yeah, so we have immunology programs behind that. So we have 2 first-in-class immunology programs, both competing to be our next development candidate. And behind that, we have a third, the best-in-class immunology program. And we've used the platform in different ways across the different programs. So for MC2, as an example, what we've done is use the platform to actually design these slow off-rate ligands. So I haven't talked about the platform at this point, so let me share a bit more about our Odysseum platform. So effectively, if you think about how people apply structure-based design today, typically you're looking at a single snapshot in time. And what we want to move towards is high-resolution structural data that's interactive and dynamic. And the way we do this is by measuring mass change in complex biological ecosystems. And that's, as I said, based on pioneering work at Oxford University over decades by our scientific founder. And we apply it across the drug discovery cascade. That's one example for MC2, directly measuring off rate, but we've used it in other ways for our other programs.
One of the things that's always interesting to me, really fascinating, is that as much as there is the science, there's also the people who are doing the science. And in recent months, you've added some pretty impressive people to your team ahead of these clinical trials. How difficult is it to recruit people into a growing biotech, and how difficult in the UK is it to do that?
Yeah, we've never had an issue with really getting high quality people. I will be honest that at one point we acquired a team in Nottingham because we acquired a pharmacology CRO there, or the pharmacology team associated with that CRO. And it was difficult to recruit in Nottingham, but we don't find it difficult to recruit in Oxford. It is a premier location. There is a good consolidation of companies, so people are attracted to being there. Actually, those are US hires that you've highlighted for our clinical team. But again, even though we're now recruiting overseas where we don't have the local prestige, we found that this is just an attractive company and people are excited to join. In this case in particular, Steve Griffin, our lead clinician, he is an endocrinologist. He just wants to work on things that he cares about. He cares about this patient population. He's seen these kids. And so that's really what drives him to join a company like OMass.
I guess I have a related question there is when we talk about a company like OMass and being able to say we're part of this particular hub or this particular ecosystem around Oxford, how important is that sort of biotech branding or industry branding around these hubs in attracting good talent?
I think it is important. It's important for a number of reasons. When I came back to the UK, I will be honest that I was a little skeptical about whether I would enjoy building a biotech company here. In some ways, I came back for more personal reasons around family. But I am staying here myself, and I found it a fantastic place to build a biotech company. And Oxford in particular just has such a strong scientific foundation and the supportive ecosystem around that. So I think Oxford is now the #1 university for spin-outs. They've spun out over 300 companies. They've raised over £7 billion in pounds in capital, those companies. And it's not even just life sciences. So you saw recently Oxford Ionics, which is a quantum company, was acquired in a transaction valued over $1 billion. You've got the Ellison Institute as well in Oxford. So what that does mean is that there is a concentration of talent here, and there are world-class facilities. And so Oxford is a great place to build a biotech company.
Yeah, it's that success breeding success and really reinforcing there. Ahead of the clinical trials, you've got the HR in place, you've got the platform, you've got the good preclinical data. Are there other things that you're putting in place before you head into the clinic that are really essential to getting things right?
I think coming back to my experience at Trevena, it's about that cultural shift. So you hire these different people. They are slightly different. They have a different phenotype of development people because it's a much more regulated environment than the sort of pure research innovation environment, which tends to be more academic in terms of how people think. So you hire a slightly different phenotype that you now need to integrate into your team. And in addition, this small number of people end up spending an enormous part of your budget because everything gets more expensive. And so you need to make sure that you take the organization with you on the journey. Individuals can sort of lose sight of their assets. Our lead clinician actually sends postcards from the NC2 team. They're not physical, but they're electronic postcards, so that people can really share in that success and the progression and feel that tangible outcome of what they've done in the lab. So this impact on patients that I think does drive a lot of us in this industry. So we've been very thoughtful about that at OMass, that transition to development.
I guess two other areas that become increasingly important as you head into the clinic. One is regulation. The other one is manufacturing and being able to scale up. Let's take the first, regulation. Are you anticipating any hurdles, any challenges there?
Yeah, so for regulation manufacturing, I'll cover both. So small molecules, you do have a lot of the investment and the risk actually up front in drugging the target in the first place. And that's where our platform has helped us. And so we have now been able to successfully demonstrate a track record of being able to drug these hard targets. But now from a manufacturing perspective, it is more straightforward. I'm not going to say it's completely straightforward because it can still trip you up, but we have hired a fantastic CMC lead to take that on. And then from a regulatory perspective as well, it's a relatively well-trodden path to move small molecules through clinical development. We are actually doing our first clinical trial in Australia. So our focus is on submission of a CTA there.
Okay. Your UK biopharma sector in general now, if we're talking about them, they've had some pretty good success around COVID with AstraZeneca. That was fantastic. But how do you see the ecosystem around there in Oxford actually fostering innovation? And I guess a related question is, how are you feeding into that rather than just benefiting from it?
Yeah, so we do feed into it. We feed into it by participating in sort of various different Oxford groups that meet and network. We also participate in it by sharing some interactions with the university. So we had a kind of combined day last year where we got together with Carol's lab. And we had a very nice presentation session at OMass, sharing different aspects of the work on both the academic side and the company side. And then we had a dinner together at Exeter College. So that was a good opportunity to continue to stimulate interest from an academic side in what OMass is doing. We also at one point actually had a board observer that was another academic in the Oxford ecosystem. So there was a program where they were looking to enhance the number of women academics who take on small company formation, and felt that getting board exposure was a good way for those individuals to learn a bit about what that looks like. And so we had somebody sit and observe on our board for a year. So there are different ways that we do contribute back, as well as taking from that Oxford ecosystem.
In terms of finding partners, you've had some success already raising venture capital. You've had success in the Oxford ecosystem. What about in terms of pharma partners? So Sanofi's in as a part of the venture, but how about pharma partners to drive this forward and actually one day market something?
Yeah, so I'm a business development professional by background, so of course transactions are a part of my lifeblood, but I always think you want to make sure that you build the value first. And so I was quite deliberate when we first joined OMass, that we weren't going to be sort of hunting a deal until we'd built value in the company. So you will note, if you go back through our press releases, that we hired a CBO, probably, I'm thinking now 18 months ago. So that was really the transition where we started thinking that it might be of interest to partner. And we've had great interest actually across our assets. One of the points of feedback that we always get is that we have great targets. We've selected really high quality targets. Every single program is hopefully a winner that people think has potential to have a meaningful impact on patients. So partnering is absolutely going to be part of our strategy, but we deliberately chose to build value first.
Is that idea of building value something that other UK biotechs and startups in biotechs can really take on board? If you're going to look for funding, if you're going to ask for a venture capital investment, you need to build that value and demonstrate that value first?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly for partnerships, I think you do sometimes for a spin out, you can be relatively early. I mean, OMass was relatively early when it attracted its first venture capital dollars. So there you were selling potential rather than sort of historical value build. But I think for partnerships, you can often partnerships can be quite distracting, both searching for them and also delivering against them. And so you want to make sure you're doing it at the right time. You're getting enough sort of return from the deal, which means that you've probably got something that you've already included to drive the value up of that deal. And also at a stage and a maturity of an organization where you can cope with the deal without distracting you from where you're building value in wholly owned assets.
And I guess one last question when it comes to that UK biopharma scene. It's a global industry today. There's the UK, North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and elsewhere. How can the UK actually keep positioning itself as a good place to do biotech, a good place for biopharma investment?
Yeah. So I think the cost base, not just in the UK, but in Europe generally, is lower in the US. And I think that is an important aspect of the strength of the UK system. Now, of course, there's more money in the US, but my premise is always that money travels much more easily than science or people. And so if you focus on your value proposition and build networks into the US, then there is no restriction on your ability to attract US investment into UK biotech. So I sort of don't take the position that it's necessarily harder to raise capital as a European company. I think it's not necessarily easy to raise local capital, but we can reach into other jurisdictions. In terms of making that ecosystem successful, I think we've touched on it already, the science base. So, top tier universities, we punch above our weight, Nobel Prize winners, citations, all of that. We're in terms of even contribution to major best-selling drugs, a lot of that has come out of the UK. If you look at Greg Winter, for example, as a driver of value in the ecosystem overall. So what we really need to do is to be able to take that science and scale it. And so that's about talent. It's about maturing the industry. It's about maintaining programs such as the R&D tax credit that a lot of these companies do benefit from and rely on in their early stages. And then I think what we really need to get right is the clinical and commercial side, because we are in decline from a clinical perspective and in decline from making the UK attractive as a commercial place to launch drugs.
Let's look a little bit forward now, and I'll bring you back to OMass. You've taken the company from a platform company, a platform play, through to we're just about to go into the clinic. What sort of goals have you set for the company in the months and in the years ahead? What should we be looking for as milestones?
Yeah, so I highlighted our vision at the beginning. So moving our first program into the clinic is clearly our next key milestone, but it is just one step in the journey. Ultimately, we are excited about the possibility to relatively quickly move into late stage development for that program and potentially commercialize that program ourselves. It's a rare disease opportunity. It's certainly amenable to a small biotech growing its own capabilities around that program. And then we have the immunology program, which is programs which are now maturing. So getting development candidates here and moving those into the clinic. In addition, there will be partnering opportunities. We've touched on that as well. So we do see part of our strategy being to partner around both the pure platform partnerships, so working on other targets of interest to other companies, and also asset partnerships along the way. So those are some of the things that we anticipate in our future.
Well, being a platform, there's scope there for you to really be targeting other areas, things like lupus and IBD, inflammatory disorders as well. Will you need to have an injection of capital for that? Will you need to have a partner, or is this something that you'll get to when you've moved through what we're already working on now with MC2?
Yeah, I mean, we're focused at this point, but we're focused on 4 assets. So although MC2 is the most advanced, we are still fully progressing 3 immunology portfolios, 3 immunology assets alongside. So we have GPR65, which is an agonist, which is for inflammatory bowel disease as a lead indication. So looking to select a candidate next year. We have SLC15A4, which is for lupus. That's an inhibitor. Again, looking to select a candidate next year. So that both of those are maturing not that far behind MC2. And then we have a CGAS program, which is a best-in-class opportunity, and that is now in lead optimization. So our focus is 4 assets.
And I guess a final question from me. If we're looking ahead, you've got this fantastic platform, you've got the therapies that are going to be moving out of that platform. Do you see those shaping the way that we address rare disease?
So the rare disease focus at this point for OMass is the endocrinology program. So one of our passions here is around the CAH opportunity and the ability to make a meaningful impact on patients. But in that mission to build Britain's big biotech, I do anticipate that there will be other rare disease targets that we include in our portfolio. But for now, our focus is endocrinology and immunology, and our rare disease program is limited to MC2 at this point.
Yeah. You've certainly got an interesting asset there. It's going to be fantastic to see you into the clinic. Thanks for joining us today on Beyond Biotech, Ros Deegan.
Thanks, Dylan.
That's it for this episode. Don't forget to check out all the latest news and analysis at Labiotech.eu. I hope wherever you are in the world, you have a great week ahead. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next time for another Beyond Biotech.